There we are. Awesome.
We are. Okay, let me put my phone down.
All right. So tonight, we had postponed it from last week, but tonight we're going to go over coaching. When you need a coach, why having a coach can be helpful, and just some kind of troubleshooting with coaching that we've had. So we wanted to start with kind of the changes that went on earlier this year. So I'll start with asking you, Ellie, what changes did you have to make, and what was the situation? Hi, Jacob. What was the situation as things started to get canceled? What kinds of things did you notice in your runners and athletes, and where did you go from there?
Yeah, so COVID changed everything because it all of a sudden got rid of races, and it got rid of community, I think, too, to a great degree. So now the runners that I work with no longer had races are still technically on the schedule. Some of them I'm like, when are you going to cancel this? But so now they're dealing with a lot of uncertainty. And I think as coaches, you sort of know that a good portion of people are motivated to run by having something on the calendar. And so when this happened, quite frankly, a lot changed. A lot changed for my runners in their, just how they were feeling when they were showing up. A lot changed in my relationships with them and how we engaged, in the discussions around how stressful it has been for them. Because, I have runners who have been furloughed. I have runners who have businesses that were affected by this. I also have runners who are like, I'm working from home and this is no big deal and I love running alone. And so a lot of the training that I had to do as a coach was just switch their training to something that was doable and feasible, and adapt and adjust to what their life was going through at that time. Yeah, that was a big part of it, is just like adapting to what their life was going through. Because I think, it would have been easy to say, well, let's just stay the course with the training that you're in and what you're doing and working towards. As somebody who understands how stressful these life circumstances are and how stressful COVID was for a lot of people, it was honestly saying, hey, look, I don't think this is the right path right now. And there's no reason to think that we need to be turning up the heat when there's, nothing to train for. Let's adapt to your life circumstances. And I think that's a big role that coaches play.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think taking into account all of those difficult life events, just change in general. I think a lot of my athletes, well, a couple, they felt like it was almost less stressful. Like, oh, I get to work from home, just like you said, this is fun, I have more time, we can kind of push it. But any change is difficult on the system, even if you don't feel it right away. So I agree. I think that's where we come into play, or any coach really comes into play, is adjusting to that individual's circumstances and pulling the reins when they might feel like pushing forward in something like this. No reason. I think a lot of people I worked with, we ended up taking a little bit of a down week and just kind of reevaluating what was going on, maybe add in some strength here and there for something that had been kind of a nagging issue.
Yeah, and I think not all coaches operate that way. I could be wrong in making that assumption, but I think there are some coaches who build programming out for weeks, right? And so people have a plan. Lots of people like to be able to see what they're going to be doing ahead of time. And I think Steph and I both really value being able to adjust in any moment, to adapt for things that pop up, like people get sick, right? Life finds a way. And, in hiring a coach, I think that's part of the value that you and I bring to the table, is being able to adapt quickly to your unique and individual experience. And I'm curious to know too, like from you, what were some of the things that you did in those early COVID days?
Yeah, great question. So I think on the calendar, a lot of times things were postponed. So it was like, okay, we pushed you out a week. This is what we were building towards. Now we're going to take a little bit of a down week, come back down to more of a foundational level. We're not going to push speed or anything, just sprinkle in spice, kind of like we did in the programs, to keep you interested, keep things, I guess, fresh and moving, make sure we maintain the fitness you have, but we don't need to push fitness right now. And then as things got more drawn out, for a couple people, depending on their situation, and this is where we're on the phone a lot, or a lot of emails, right? Like there's a lot of communication. For a couple people, we put hi Chelsea, we put a race on the calendar, like a time trial, because the race was close enough that they were ready for it, and I wanted them to feel like they could see their fitness changing and see some results. Obviously not the same as a race situation, but I think that kept some motivation up. For others, we took a couple down weeks, completely restructured the program, and just came back with very easy mileage, even some backing off to walk run, versus if they had been running the entire schedule. So it really just varied like that, just like you said, very individualized. And when I was reflecting on my former training plans before I got a coach, it was very much, just like you said, weeks at a time. Okay, next week has to be better. Hey, Lisa, thanks for joining. Next week has to be better than the week before. And that's a recipe for disaster. Didn't take anything into account as far as my stress levels, didn't take into account sleep or anything. It was just like checking boxes. And that's never what I want my runners to feel. So it's a constant variation. Was there anything else that you changed for some of your specific runners that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I think some other things that had to change were the fact that like my runners no longer had access to the gym. And, you know, when they did have access, a big part of some of the reasons why runners seek out my services now is to help them learn about how to lift heavy weights and what that sort of stair step looks like as well, to improve their performance and improve hopefully how resilient they feel and are while they run. And suddenly, basically, that got chopped off for everybody that was doing it. And we had to, you know, figure out what equipment that they had access to. So, you know, I have some runners who had absolutely no equipment, maybe just a few bands. And then I have some runners who have, you know, some really decent kettlebells. And it completely, I was gonna say, dropped a bomb on their programming. And that sounds bad, but it did. And I think it did for all of us who, you know, like from the coaching perspective, from also my own activity perspective, it completely changed my perspective and why I engage with sport and running and how I want to do that in a way that serves me and fosters just a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
On that note, I think it's Recover Performance. Is it Kevin?
Yes.
Okay.
Kevin. Sorry,
yeah,
I can't see the questions because it's behind my computer.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, Kevin just mentioned a lot of my runners have loved the transition from training for a race to training for life, just like you said. But time trials have definitely helped keep them motivated. So yeah, it kind of brings us back to why we do what we do, right? Is it about the races? For some people, that's what it's all about, and this is probably a much tougher time.
Right.
For some people, I'm sure they've seen that transition to like, oh, I actually really enjoy the journey. And I think that's really important to get a handle on for longevity in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think like even for like, you just think about what are people's goals, you know, like if your goal is to improve, doing a time trial might be a great way to sort of measure those results. But quite frankly, I had a lot of runners who were also like, they just couldn't get out the door. You know, they couldn't get out and do it because it just felt like too much to add to their plate. You know, moms who are suddenly homeschooling their children. And, you know, my mantra early on in the work that I was doing with a lot of my runners was when in doubt, walk it out. Like if you can't get out there to do the run that you have planned, you know, at the bare minimum, try and get out there to do a walk. And if you can do that, know that you're succeeding in my eyes.
Absolutely. That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely underestimate walking. I used to be so against it, like I could just run.
Yeah.
But it's such a form of meditation too. And I think that's
Yeah.
so important during times of transition and change. So I
Yeah.
really love that.
Yeah. So moving forward, okay, we move into COVID times, and I think there's like some stability there. Like we're suddenly in, maybe a stable routine, those sorts of things. What are some of the things that you're continuing to do as a coach that help people maintain those routines and engage them in conversation that is looking to the future as well?
Well, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing comes again right back to communication. It's boring, but that's huge, and it's pretty constant. At least weekly email check-ins. We're communicating through Training Peaks all the time, and just making sure that they feel like things are on point. And in addition to that, as things start to maybe return to a new normal, monitoring fatigue, being self-honest and self-aware, ultimately, I think helping them understand what exertion feels like, what effort feels like, and when to start pulling the reins when they can tell me that. And so again, I think just the process of going through it and learning it, communicating, and setting up, even for some, again, I think comes back to just a time point where we check in, as far as could be a time trial, could be just something on the calendar to keep them looking forward to something. And as it's gotten pushed back, I think I've expected people to be more disappointed than they actually are.
Yeah.
Which I think tells me that they are, again, invested in that process and the maintenance portion of it. As far as the training goes, we're maintaining as much fitness as we can, but I've also tried to tell people, like, this is part of the ups and downs. Like,
Right.
it's okay, and we actually are fine to lose a little bit of fitness. This is
Right.
the time that we can do that. And then working on strength maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
And talk
Yeah.
about difference.
I think that's actually a really important component as well, is like, you see somebody who's been consistent, and then maybe that consistency falls off and they worry like, oh, my fitness isn't where I want to be. But I think in times of high stress, the last thing you want to be doing is being really on the gas. We just have enough evidence to tell us, that doing that too much through periods of high stress can be detrimental to performance, can lead to injuries, those sorts of things. And I think in working with a coach, that's like the push-pull relationship that constantly occurs, that you've got a runner who's like, I want to be pushed harder. And you might have to say, well, now may not be the time. And some of that is like gaining trust with your athletes and them gaining trust with you, that they can speak up when they feel like they're not being pushed the way that they want to, and that you can speak up and say, actually, like, we need to pull the reins in a little bit. And sometimes it just helps to have that, I want to say, that mirror for runners, somebody to hold you accountable, somebody to ask the hard questions and engage you in conversation that ultimately gets you to where you want to be. I think as coaches, we're like zooming way out and saying, like, where does this athlete want to be a year from now, 5 years from now? Like, how can we set the stage, working backwards from there in a successful way? And as you had mentioned, so many runners think that it's just like this. It's just like a linear path. The reality is it needs to be ebb and flow, right? It needs to be up and down. And COVID has brought us, I think, more into a little bit of a downtime, which might mean, like you mentioned, that we can focus more on things like strength, or I've been having runners do a decent amount of drills and just skill work. Yeah. So that actually brings me to another question that I think is important to ask. And it's really like, why would somebody engage with a coach who is also a PT? And I'm curious to know what your answer is on
From my own personal experience, having a coach who is also a PT, and then what I have, because I've asked this question as well. So what I have inquired about from my athletes is the management of these little things that are just bound to pop up that we get anxious about, and either one, I mean, there's one of two directions we go. We either just run through it, and then pretty soon we're in trouble, and then it's like, could have been managed a little bit ago, or just completely stop running altogether when it could have been something that you likely could have continued going through. And I think that's a product of just us as a profession, probably not, maybe not as a profession, but as coaches and PTs, maybe not educating people on pain as well as we should, as well as sorry, dog's in my face. I lost my train of thought, Roscoe. So I think that's a product of us probably not educating on pain as well as we could, as well as just what running means to us. And if we experience pain as something that could keep us out of running, then I mean, you could still go either way. Like, nope, I'm going to push through this. I'm going to get through it. I don't want this to be taken away from me, or I better stop so that it's not taken away from me. And the worst thing is going, when you don't go in to see anyone because you're afraid they're going to tell you not to run.
Yes.
And so I think that's another way that we've probably failed people as healthcare practitioners, is by just telling people to rest and stop doing what they're doing, rather than finding ways for them to, when appropriate, finding ways for them to continue doing what they love to do within safe parameters.
Yeah.
So as physical therapists, we've got that balance.
Yeah. I think that that's why I love coaching so much, is because I feel like I can be in a better position to help somebody stay consistent with it. I think that so often where runners go wrong is they start to have pain, and they go to somebody who, like you said, says, we need to back it off. And I think there are so many instances where that does more harm than good. And when you work with somebody who's a coach and a physical therapist, we can help problem solve those things, and like right away make suggestions on how you can change your training to account for what you're experiencing and feeling. And I think that is a better solution for most runners who like running than completely resting.
Absolutely. And there's some, really, just like you said, there's some easy tweaks to the strength programs that we also provide that can take care of something very quickly. And it's much easier to talk someone off the ledge when you have that background that we've been able to have, and add that to your coaching knowledge.
Yeah. And I think if you're looking to strive for that first big goal, like if you're shooting for half marathon or marathon distance and you've never done those distances before, I mean, I know I'm really biased. I just think like hiring a PT run coach, that combo, like you're going to get to that goal and feel pretty damn good about it. Again, I know I'm really biased, but
I'm biased too. I completely agree. You're like, preach. Yeah. So with that said, how have you handled or dealt with injuries in athletes, and any other tips or things that you've encountered that we didn't just talk about with like little tweaks to exercise programs?
Yeah. So first of all, like I work with human beings. Human beings have pain. And I really wish I could preach from all high here and say none of my athletes have pain or injury. I can't control the weather. So as much to my chagrin, I do wish I could control the weather. So all the time, all the time sounds bad too, but I'm helping people to do things all the time. And I think most recently, the first person that comes to mind is a woman that I've been working with for a little while who found out she had a stress fracture today. And, when she first started presenting with pain, it was like, let's back it way off, because here's the thing, like, you, as a PT, there are certain signs and symptoms of stress fracture that will lead you to think this person could have a stress fracture, right? And she was like presenting with those just straight out of the gates with what she was reporting to me. And basically I stopped her in her tracks and said, I don't want you running. We tried walking for a couple of weeks and it just wasn't working. And so finally was like, go see your doctor, and sent her to the right physician, the right person who got her on track and moving in the right direction. And that is, like, I think, invaluable for people who struggle with injury. And stress fracture to me is like the worst possible scenario for any coach. Like, you really don't want to be in that position as a coach. It's not fun, but it's not fun for the person either. And then beyond that, I think of just a woman that I've been working with who had gluten hamstring pain. And she had seen me in the past for a different injury, and then she came on to my roster for coaching. We've been working together in the coaching capacity, and she just started having this gluten hamstring pain. And instead of doing, high velocity activity like sprints or strides or just fast-paced runs, it was like, okay, it's okay that you have hamstring pain. We're going to continue to run and see how you tolerate it, but you're not going to run fast for a bit. And I think that's going to be totally fine to your ecosystem. And that just is not how most runners are going to experience pain and injury. They'll have to go through a whole thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I think with the on the stress fracture note, as I posted about, I also recently found out I have a stress fracture, and imaging wasn't positive the first time. So had I not had a physical therapist as a coach, I probably would still be trying to run on it. I trusted that, and after a few weeks of it starting to get better and then not, my coach, Renee Hodges of Foundation PT, I'll plug her. She's like, Steph, this just isn't adding up. And so even knowing what I know, having that person, that soundboard, was super helpful for me, because it's so hard sometimes to interpret what you're feeling and what you should be doing, and then balance that with what has been shown on one image. And I think that's a strong reminder to get second opinions, or if something's not adding up, to seek help. But that's another huge part of where a coach comes in. For my athletes, there certain things like one was gardening over the weekend and then all of a sudden had some knee pain, so we just changed up the strength plan for that week, took out one run, changed it to a walk, and it was gone. As far as like an Achilles issue, same thing. You can continue running. Let's stay in certain guidelines, but we're going to take out the hills, take out speed work this week.
Yeah.
So just the ability to know from descriptions and what you know about their history, and again, that communication, I just keep harping on that. The ability that for us to discern whether or not we can run, one, and two, just need to tweak a few things. I think that's again a huge advantage.
I think so too. Yeah, I mean that the ability to tweak things and know, to have certain knowledge around why you would tweak, a speed workout if somebody's having Achilles pain. Like maybe the athlete doesn't need to know that, but if they do need to know that and want to know it, we have the capacity to be able to tell them why. And then a lot of times that can help for long-term too, right? Because maybe this pops up again in a year and suddenly this person's, maybe not working with me, but they can say, well, last time this happened, Ellie said, keep running, but maybe don't do as much speed work. So I pulled the reins back for a week or two and I felt better and kept going.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. That's huge. It's all part of that learning process.
Toot our own horns.
Yes. And we have a big network, of PTs who are also coaches. So I think that's a point too, is find somebody who fits with you and understands you and your goals.
Yeah.
I like to think we're very likable, but sometimes people find a different, better fit for them.
That's true. That's true. I'd like to think we're likable as well. Yeah. And I think too, like we also are still coming at it with a very performance mindset. I think performance is always everyone's goal. Like people are just trying to be better, like at running, at life, like whatever it is.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious to know on a performance front, as a coach, what are some of the things that you think about?
Yeah, I'm going to say hi to Emma. Thanks for joining, Emma, real quick.
Hey, Emma.
So from what I'm teaching people from a performance standpoint?
Yeah. Like what does a coach offer in that regard?
Oh, absolutely.
For you as a person.
Yeah. As a, just generally for getting better, I think one of the biggest things is just what we've talked about, consistency. So knowing when you can continue and when you can't. I mean, one of the biggest barriers to reaching those higher levels are these roller coasters where you run a ton, you get injured, then you're resting. Then you come back too fast, you run a ton, and you have to rest. So I think that's first and foremost, is that consistency of training that we can manage with our knowledge of aches and pains. After that, I think that we've both done some additional training for coaching. I know you're a USATF as well. And then just also a lot of reading, and kind of what the building blocks are from 1 month to the next to improve your running economy, improve your aerobic power, and basically get you faster. And with those two things of kind of the one, injury management, keeping you running, the consistency, two, the changing of variables throughout each month, that's what's going to lead you to new PRs and get you faster.
Yeah. I think that's the role the coach plays, right? Is like, the coach is trying to work you progressively. And I know I've used this analogy a ton, but it's like crescendos, right? And we're constantly trying to build on something from the last either week or the last day or the last training block and work to get you better in the process. So yeah, I mean, I think like we got the PT aspect, and that's a huge part of our identity. And also we're really well versed in the physiological aspects that are going to get you to be a better runner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So work with us.
Yeah. And we've got the quarantine programs are still up. We each do individual coaching as well, which would be more of kind of what we talked about today. And then you can still sign up for our quarantine race as well. Hopefully most of us are out of that, but the training was primarily in that isolation quarantine period.
And I think too, like if you need something on the calendar and you haven't been running, this is a 5K and a 10K. It's, we're not shooting for the moon here. We're shooting for those beginner level distances. It would be a great way to do it. And we're going to be donating a portion of whatever we make on this to a charity of our choice, probably going to be Black Girls Run.
So do we have any questions right off the bat here?
That's your dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
You were talking at one point and I was like, oh my God, try not to laugh. She's talking about something serious. But
I know. I've been on calls where people think there's like an 80-year-old smoker in my house. Oh no. Yeah. But
awesome.
Well, it looks like we don't have any questions right now.
Yeah.
So if any come up, feel free to message each of us or either of us. And then we'll be back next week now with another one because we kind of pushed last week's back to this week. So we'll be back next week. The topic is up, but I can't remember right now. So don't worry, we'll post about it.
I can't remember it either. We've still got to talk about, I know we're going to be talking about at some point, recovery, I think, nutrition, RPE, that's rating of perceived exertion for those that may not know, and race strategy and prep.
Yep. Coming up into like the last few weeks before the race on July 19th.
Yeah. So expect all those topics to continue to come. We're going to be showing up probably on Wednesdays. Yeah, hopefully that'll continue with my travel plans. It should be fine.
Okay. Yeah.
And then what's the best way to reach you, Steph?
You can send a message through Instagram. Otherwise, through my Instagram, there's also on Linktree. You can go into, you can find my website and send me an email or go through the contact form on my website. How about you?
Yeah. So yeah, you can find me on my website, sisuseattle.com. It's not linked currently, I don't think, in my Linktree links. But I think you can access all of that through Instagram, through the contact forms, which might also include my email, which is ellie@sisuseattle.com. Or you can just DM me here on Instagram. Probably I'll funnel you to email if it's a very specific question. But yeah, any way you want, really.
Yeah. Just you can just reach out and we'll get in touch. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and I'm excited to chat next week.
Yeah, me too. You have a good one.
Awesome. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.